It's been a long time since
Hi.
Legion 44, and I've been really excited to talk to you because I have a couple of questions about storage. But before I get into that, I would just love to, I guess for people who've never met you, but this is a follow on for those of you who are new to an interview I did with Claire for Legion 44. And that's a movie about CDR, carbon dioxide removal.
Yeah, things are going well. We're still doing what we set out to be doing. I think possibly a kind of narrowing of focus that has emerged since Legion 44 came out is that we're looking to be more of a technology services provider. So I think we have this project in Kenya to really like validate and prove our technology, but we're working really hard trying to find other opportunities for more projects in the future to be executed like with partners. So we've been working a lot on trying to find partner operators and large emitters that would want to deploy our technology to decarbonize their assets. So less focus specifically on scaling in Kenya and more just scaling globally. But the project in Kenya is going really well. We're just kind of waiting on some final construction things, but everything is proceeding smoothly as planned. And we have a couple DAC partners that have already built on site, which is exciting. So everything's
That's
there.
really great.
Yeah,
So when
it
you
looks
say
really
deploy,
different than when you came.
when you say deploy your technology, what exactly are you deploying in the sort of the cycle of removals? Because you're not doing the DAC machines. You're doing from what point to what point do you provide service?
Yeah, so we'll take DAC CO2 and put it underground into reactive rocks. So we could take CO2 from anywhere, not just DAC, um, like bikers or BECs or emission sources that are hard to decarbonize. So we're CO2 agnostic. Anything that happens basically from the wellhead underground is our jurisdiction. So our technology products, we have three different products that are designed really to help operators access geologic storage in types of rocks that they've previously overlooked. So maybe rewinding to the background, like geologic storage just means storing CO2 underground in rocks. And it's a pretty old technology, relatively mature compared to a lot of CR technologies that Legion 44 showcased. People have been pumping CO2 underground into rocks for 50 years, born out of the oil and gas industry. So, yeah, a lot of people know how to do this really well. A lot of people know how to drill holes and pump stuff underground really well. But what people don't know that much about is basalts or the type of rock that we are using because they don't have oil and gas in them. So they've kind of been overlooked by the whole subsurface industry and haven't really been seen as a resource to a lot of subsurface industries, such as like mining, oil and gas, or geothermal. And so we're developing technology products that help lower the risk for project operators to build and execute projects in these new types of rocks, from like site screening and operations, and also monitoring and verification, which we know is really critical for CDR. So yeah, our vision is that like we have this project in Kenya that we demonstrate the capability of the different products, and then hopefully in the future we'll work with operators that do the drilling and pumping part, but we'll like license our technology products into the project that helps make the project happen. So brings projects from 0 to 1 in places where storage has otherwise been thought to be not feasible because these rocks haven't been considered a resource. So that's our
Yeah.
goal, is
So,
just like adding
yeah.
rocks into the possible mix of where you can store CO2.
Well, it's fascinating, yeah, because if there is no oil in basalt, then why would they be drilling there? So you're effectively saying, look at all of these new places because we're mineralizing the CO2. So that makes a lot of sense, right? And why wouldn't, is there a reason why an oil company would give you their carbon if they have already the drill sites and the space, or have they run out of space where they are? Just curious.
Yeah, so the climate solutions in my mind will be patchwork depending on where you are in the world. There are some places where DAC works really well, and some places where the other CDR approaches work well. So, what we want to do is bring new storage capabilities online in places where you don't have access to conventional storage. So, the oil and gas companies specifically have a lot of assets in like the Gulf Coast and Texas and Louisiana, like places where their technology, conventional storage, works and where they have a lot of emissions. So we're probably never going to try to deploy in a place like that because we're a lot more, um, our value proposition is much greater where there's an emission but no conventional storage resource. So a lot of places in the world, like Japan, for example, or like Western India, South Africa, Brazil, the Pacific Northwest to the US and British Columbia. Like there are a lot of places like that that are have emission sources, but they're so far away from conventional storage in sedimentary rocks characteristic of those that host oil and gas, that the actual cost of CCS or the cost of CDR would be cost prohibitive because the transportation would make it not cost effective to actually decarbonize those assets or build projects there. So we want to bring kind of more tailored storage solutions to places that are too far away from conventional. So we don't really see it as like a competing solution, but more just like tailored to emission
Mm-hmm.
sources that are not next to those big storage hubs like in
Right.
Louisiana or Texas.
Yeah, it was interesting. I'm sure you saw the article. I think it was in Nature that said that there was no storage. There wasn't enough storage room. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
What was that all about? I couldn't. I think that's when I emailed you. I said I got to talk to Claire because that doesn't seem right. So, what was that article for those the lay people are listening to this? What was it saying, and why was it wrong, or why was it partially wrong?
So I wish I had read it more recently because
It's
I
okay.
don't know that I'm ready to like explain it fully.
Yeah.
But we'll just say that from the data that they presented in that article, an equally valid title for the article would be, "We have enough storage to store all of the emissions for the next 100 years." There's still a lot of storage. It's just not as much as what people had been saying previously. But
I
like
see.
to those of us in the storage world, nothing in that article was new or surprising at all. Like
Hmm.
actually, this
Hmm.
is kind of what I've been saying for a long time now is that there's a difference between like theoretical potential and capacity, um, because yeah, you could calculate theoretical potential just based on how much physical space is there in the pores of this rock formation where one could feasibly fit CO2. So that's like an astronomical number. And in the CDR community specifically, I've heard of a lot of kind of DAC or CDR enthusiasts being like, storage is not a problem. It's limitless capacity. We have everything all figured out. Like, let's focus on DAC or let's focus on these other things. And I've always been kind of quietly being like, that's not true. So I was actually really happy when that article came out.
Oh, that's funny.
Because,
Okay.
yeah,
Wish it's
because
more realistic.
yeah, it does like change. I, it's something to point to like kind of, yeah, ground truth the expectations of non geologic storage specialists in terms of like, okay, yeah, there's enough capacity, but like we need to remember that rocks themselves aren't a resource, just
Right.
like the air is not a, a resource of CDR, like a it's a technology enabled resource. And there's a lot of factors that go into making that happen. Like you could point to every molecule of CO2 in the air and say, this is the potential of DAC, but that's very different than like the number of like, this is where direct air capture projects are going to happen, considering manufacturing, considering energy, considering all of these other factors. So that article is really kind of like considering what's deployable. Like
Deployable.
let's just
Hmm.
shrink our expectations. So I think that's kind of the analogy that I
That's
usually
interesting.
work with. Yeah.
Well, that falls on the same. I did two conversations around renewable energy and available minerals because it's a bit the same. Where everyone says the Earth has enough minerals for renewable energy and batteries, but most of it's underground still. So it limits your deployable battery capacity and renewable energy capacity if it's still underground. And it was quite a lot. I mean, it said something like Benchmark Minerals was saying we need, over 200 mines within the next 3 years to be open and fully functional for us to sustain some of this stuff. So I guess it's the same what you're saying, that if you don't, it might be theoretically there, but it's not actually within the deployable reality, I guess. So interestingly enough, so in Kenya, are you working with what companies are you working with for removals? Are there any that were in Legion as well that we met? Was Octavia in there? And or who else are you working with over there?
Yes. So the companies that have already built on site are Octavia, which was in the movie, and great to see. And also Serona Technologies. They're based in Brussels. So they built a pilot DAC unit and a little solar array right next to our wellhead, which is, yeah, exciting that their things are actually making it into 3 dimensions. So yeah, I'll send you some photos of the site because now it looks really like a DAC to storage plant, um,
Nice.
one of the only in the world. And even though we're still like waiting on more data from the from actually doing the injection and the monitoring, it's really exciting to see, yeah, how much progress we've made since the movie came out. So you'll
Yeah,
have to
it's
do a
incredible.
sequel movie and come
I know
back.
we have to. We'll deploy. Well, this is part of what we're doing is just catching up because it's so important. And what else? So, what are the how? What are the challenges you're seeing right now? What are Cella's needs right now uh, in terms of expanding? Because it seems like it's working. Your tech is working. You have pilots. You have projects. What's next? And what stands in your way, or what doesn't? Maybe it's smooth sailing right now.
Yeah, it's been going pretty well for us. And I think what stands in our way is not unique compared to probably what all the other CDR companies you've talked to have to say at this point in time, which is that, um, yeah, the kind of lull in the hype cycle related to CDR is pretty palpable. Um, and yeah, both I think in the context of like buyers, which we're not worried about that right now. I don't think as much as tech companies are, but also like investors and just general kind of vibe around carbon tech and CDR has really changed quite a lot from 2, 3, 4 years ago. Um, And materially, it hasn't really affected us at all. So we've been lucky. I mean, Trump didn't repeal the 45Q tax credits for DAC plus storage or for dedicated storage. So it remained largely unchanged. The only thing that he really did in the carbon management space, besides like pull most of the funding for projects, but the actual like tax incentives are still there. He just raised the dollar amount that's given for enhanced oil recovery compared to dedicated storage. So now it's like equally as cost effective in terms of tax credit to pump CO2 underground to recover more oil than it is to just store the CO2, which I don't think actually affects the geologic storage industry in the US all that much because most, well, even globally, most of the I think like 75% of the world's geologic storage projects are for enhanced oil recovery. That is predicted to change massively, like totally flip on its head in the next few years. But that's mostly because of projects outside of the US, like Asia Pacific, Europe, North Sea, Australia, like a lot of different places internationally have dedicated storage projects either in the works or coming online soon, I hope. Um, so yeah, the vibe is just kind of a bummer, even though we're still okay. But yeah, I think one weirdly good thing that has come out of this downturn like vibe for CDR in the US is that a lot of DAC companies and buyers, and there's just kind of like a renewed or new energy being injected into the Kenya CDR ecosystem. So when we first started the company in 2022, seemed like everyone was like, Kenya, you're insane. That's never going to work. Like, what are you doing? Like, I would invest if it wasn't in Kenya. Like, we were getting kind of a lot of stuff like that, or DAC companies just saying, like, yeah, we'll partner if you come to the US. And that's just so not at all the case anymore. Like, the Kenya ecosystem is very much on the map. Like, most people in the CDR world have heard of CDR in Kenya and the potential there. And so, yeah, I think that because of the US administration and how that's affecting investors and stuff, people are really looking more internationally where they can deploy and where they can get deliveries and get closer to big offtake agreements like actually soon. So we've had a lot of momentum around that project, which is exciting. And yeah,
that's really good. I mean, that's, we're feeling that even with the movie. We're about to, go on Apple. We're about to go on Apple and Amazon. I combine the two, Apple. So yeah, we're going to be in distribution. We have it on Treat Plus. We've launched our own channel because things just like everything else, you can't do persistent storytelling around these subjects on the main channels to the way that you want. So we just made our own, but we'll also go on Apple and Amazon. But I see that there's just no one really wants to talk about climate, which I think is probably good. I was talking to a political advisor who used to advise presidential candidates, and he said, the biggest mistake was just turn the environmental issues just into carbon. There are so many other things to talk about, conservation being one of them, that sort of went on the back burner for a while. But the larger part about all of this is carbon management. And you mentioned that term earlier. which really is where this all falls for me personally, just to watch it. It's really about how do you manage carbon, right? And we've had these very large carbon companies using carbon for fuels and materials, right? And chemicals. And now they're the ones that have so much infrastructure and so much know-how to lean into the carbon management area. How have we done in the CDR space? Because I remember there was a few years ago people wanting to have people sign pledges that they would never work for fossil fuel companies. Remember, I think we talked about this before. Where's that now, given the hard times? Did everyone sort of realize that maybe they should cooperate more, or what happened with that? Or does it depend on what pathway you do?
I think that it has definitely changed. Um, yeah, I mean, we've always felt like we want to work with the energy industry because for a lot of reasons. But in the early days of CDR, when we were like the black sheep for saying that openly, it like I mean it makes a ton of sense because we are work in the subsurface. Like there's a massive like the biggest industry in the world is of subsurface experts. So like we there's just no world in which our technology could scale to anything remotely impactful in isolation, in my opinion. And I think that, yeah, it does seem like that narrative has kind of caught wind a bit amongst the rest of the industry, which I think is really great to see. And yeah, I mean, I think carbon management has like almost always been a bipartisan issue if we're talking about the US.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's support on both sides. And I think as much of a bummer as Trump has been for anything environmental, conservation, climate related, like the fact that there is a lot of um, industry support for carbon management is actually reflected in like the changes that he's made um, to the IRA. Like carbon management was almost untouched compared to some of the other kind of climate related technology pathways like solar or wind, like subsidies
Right.
for those kind of dropped off a cliff, but carbon
Mm-hmm.
management is basically the same. And I think that's because a lot of oil and gas companies see a business for, they see themselves in this industry at scale and have lobbied to maintain it. So I guess that's good for all of us. I mean, whether or not you agree with the like morality behind their motives or whatever, this the impact on climate, in my opinion, is the same. Like if we get them on board and wanting to deploy these technologies and they get the administration to make it happen for them economically, that's great for us, I think, because carbon down is good, carbon out is bad. So I know that's overly simplistic, but that is kind of fundamentally, you know, I'm a geochemist, so that's how I think about it.
All right, so you basically are weathering this pretty well. Uh, Cella is doing pretty all right, which I'm excited to hear.
You should come back to Kenya now that we have some like more exciting stuff to show you in the field.
Thanks so much, Claire, for just taking a moment of your day to tell us what you're doing. And we'll catch up in Kenya, I guess, at one point soon.